Hey guys, Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer. We talk about music, books, and movies. And today we're gonna be starting a new series. We're gonna be reviewing some of the darkest albums ever made, according to a list I found on Rate Your Music, which will be linked in the description. And since these albums are basically the musical equivalent of a void, go away, fly. Sorry, there's a fly in here buzzing around my head. But anyway, since these albums are the musical equivalent of a void, I figured I'd bring in my void dragon imaginary friend, Regina-Void Black Hole. And today's albums are going to be Night Force and Night of the Bloody Tapes by the Cherry Point. So, before I bring in Regina-Void to review these two, though, I'm going to briefly give my thoughts on this EP and album, respectively. Let's start with Night Force. This EP belongs to a genre called harsh noise, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Track 1, however, is actually pretty dynamic. There's some interesting instrumental shifts here, and it does create an interesting soundscape, even though it is just, harsh noise. And track 2 is okay, but it's also less dynamic and therefore not as interesting. I will say I like the transition between the two tracks, though. It feels like an explosion, even though track 1 was already pretty intense. Yeah, this EP is only 2 tracks long, but I kind of enjoyed it. Anyway, as for Night of the Bloody Tapes, it was interesting at first, but as it went on, I was wanting it to end. I get that it belongs to a genre called harsh noise wall, which is pretty much, again, exactly what it sounds like. Just a wall of harsh noise that pretty much never changes. But I guess it's just not my thing. Again, it was interesting at first, and I will say track 2 was somewhat enjoyable just because it had a bit more atmosphere to it. But if someone asked me to sit through this again, I would definitely say no. I get the appeal, but it's just kind of boring to me. I give Night Force, the EP, a 7 out of 10. And I give Night of the Bloody Tapes a 5 out of 10. Anyway, let's throw it over to Regina-Void Black Hole, since she likes this kind of thing more than I do.
Hey guys! Regina-Void Black Hole here, and today we're talking about disturbing music. Specifically, we're talking about one of my favorite noise musicians, the Cherry Point. The Cherry Point is a musician I've been a fan of for a long time. He just makes such brutal yet dynamic harsh noise that speaks to my soul. Starting with his EP Night Force, this EP is really good. The first track creates some interesting soundscapes, with a few great instrumental shifts thrown in. It's also quite well produced, as well as is most of the Cherry Point's work. Track 2 has an enjoyably brutal atmosphere as well, but it's also less dynamic and therefore less enjoyable as a regular harsh noise piece. The EP gets an 8 out of 10. As for Night of the Bloody Tapes, it falls more into the harsh noise wall genre, meaning less dynamic and more just a wall of brutal, intense noise. However, by the standards of Harsh Noise Wall, this album is pretty dynamic. It's about as dynamic as that subgenre can get while still being considered Harsh Noise Wall. Track 2 in particular has some atmospheric elements, and track 4 gets gradually more intense as it goes on. It still brings the monolithic feeling that I appreciate about Harsh Noise Wall, though. It's the musical equivalent of being electrocuted non-stop for 40 minutes and 34 seconds. In other words, it sums up the dark side of life perfectly, which for me is the appeal of Harsh Noise Wall. Life is miserable, and sometimes I like my music to affirm that. Also, every song is great, and this was the first Harsh Noise Wall album I ever heard. 10 out of 10. Back to you, Morgan.
And that's my video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I'm Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer, and I'm out.